sometimes you want to do a renovation to a section of the building. That might be the optimal time to do that sort of thing, rather than trying to just get it in there, build walls that might not be relevant for you in 5 years. That'd be the only thing I say. Or take this opportunity, if you're having to rebuild those walls, to start looking at, how you might want to adjust that or make sure that it's your permanent long-term solution. I'd just hate to spend money now and then renovate those spaces down the road and rip out walls you just built, that sort of thing.
Right. And I'm not, the numbers you just shared right now, I don't recall seeing in the report. So
yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. What are the numbers?
There was the cost for the option one was approximately $570,000. And the other option was listed, I think, at $57,000. Option two, which was the mud jacking. That was sent out as a separate email. I believe Chris might have that. I don't know if that's in these particular documents that are up there, but it was $57,000 for that second option. What neither one of those consider is just those kind of little ancillary things like, wall base and stuff like that. We just have to pick how far you want to go with those sorts of things or not.
Does the temporary option just stabilize the pad, the pad, or is it actually raise it? Or
option two would raise it. So essentially it's jacking. So essentially what you do is you go in there and you think of some of the, like that spray foam that you use around, openings in the outside of your house, how it expands. It's got, you gotta be careful with it. It's got structure to itself. It's got a force that builds up. So when they put it under there, it's a pressurized system, and it essentially pushes up on the floor slab and it brings it up. That's what they did in the gym back in the day when they built that up. I believe that had dropped an inch or two or whatnot when that problem came up. So they went in, they did that mud jacking, and now you look at the wall base, there's only 1/8 of an inch below it. And in a wood floor system, that's typically what you want, is 1/8 of an inch so the floor can breathe. So it looks like it's doing what it was supposed to do. It looks like it held. The Solar Testing Labs report indicates that they feel that the majority, if not all, of the sinking has occurred already. That isn't to say it couldn't happen. It isn't to say that you couldn't have some sort of washout, but they felt fairly confident based on the information they found that the bulk of your issues is already taking place.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was curious about is I read that. So if we do that mud jacking, is that going to stabilize it for some period of time or for a longer, what kind of period of time are we talking about? Any idea?
I hate to be that guy. I can't put a definitive on it. It's one of those things.
Well, but
it's the dirt. To give it some sort of a comp, I mean, you can look at the gym. It was something you did, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, whenever that took place, and it's held. So in theory, it could hold forever if the depression is stopped. If there is some sort of a break in a water line, from your roof drains or something that was causing you guys problems, but you took care of that on the outside of the building. But if there was something like that created some form of washout, you could see some more dropping of that soil. The thing that you could do though is you could go back in and pump it up some more if that became an issue. So you have or pump up one room that might have a little more settling than another. It's something where you have a little more flexibility, and the cost is considerably less.
Thank you.
I mean, if money were no issue and disrupting an entire section of the building were no issue and all those sorts of things, the optimum choice would be to do option one, but it's $570,000 plus versus $57,000 plus. So it's tenfold.
If we were to do option one, could we bundle new tennis courts in the basement and then we could do two things at once?
I like the way you're thinking. Water was our issue with the tennis courts, so it's I like that. That's funny.
All right. Any other questions for Ryan or Eric? Okay.
No,
well, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you the rest of your evening back. Unless you want to stay with us, you're welcome to enjoy the party here. If not, you guys can have your evening back, and I'll turn it back over to Joelle.
Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Good seeing everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to do a really quick presentation on our special education audit that we conducted back in May. And so Craig, you're going to pull that up there. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start off. So as you know, we hired a company to come in and give us, do a third-party audit of our special education services to address several questions and things that we were looking at in terms of services, if we provided a right continuum, and just kind of give us an overall sense of, you know, how we're doing with our special ed program. And so they came on in district and met with groups of parents, did a parent survey. They talked to every single staff member that is involved with special education. They also spoke to all of our building administrators, looked at IEPs, looked at a bunch of our data that we have in terms of our special needs students, and put together a pretty comprehensive report on what they saw based on all of that collective data. And so this is just going to be a high level kind of overview on what they saw. Some of the things that they saw that they were very proud of and said that were great is that we have a very supportive and dedicated staff when it comes to our special needs staff and the people who work with our special needs staff. There was ample evidence of instructional best practices that they saw in the classrooms when they visited, because they did do classroom observations. We have very good inclusive practices in our extracurricular activities. So it's very evident we have kids with special needs that participate in our band and on our gymnastics team and in our swimming team. And so they thought that was amazing how many kids we have that actually are part of those teams and feel part of those teams. They said that our staffing levels were appropriate. That was something that was questioned, that we didn't have enough staff to staff our special needs students and their needs. But they had indicated based on that data that our staffing is appropriate. Our achievement data for students with disabilities is on par or exceeds our similar districts. So they looked at what the state identifies as our similar district and compared our data to the data with students with disabilities, and so was either equal to or exceeded the data in our comparable districts. And our community embraces our kids with special needs. It's evident through the conversations that they had with parents, through the programming that they see that we have at schools, and just the acceptance of our general ed population and how they embrace our kids with special needs. Thank you. So we've identified, there was definitely some themes that came through in that report. So there's definitely some areas for continued growth. And so these are the 4 areas that, you know, we know as a district we need to continue working through when it comes to working with our families, our staff, and our students with special needs. So relationship building came through loud and clear. Effective communication, I will add that word to that. Compliance and procedures, and data-driven decision-making. So those are the kind of the 4 themes that we saw throughout the report based on some of the recommendations that they've made. So I'm going to take each one of those and just kind of talk through them. Relationship building, there was definitely, they said, an attitude that they saw in us versus them. So if it's teachers versus administrators, administrators versus central office, there was definitely that theme that came through. And kind of that attitude, like, you know, we're being told what to do and we're not working collectively together to come up with solutions. So we need to definitely address that us versus them and become a we. We need to reestablish trust with all stakeholders. Over the years, there's been a lot of trust that has been broken with our teachers, with our staff, with our parents, not feeling like there's follow through. So really, there's going to be a need to reestablish that trust with all of our stakeholders. And then the need to work as a team. There were decisions being made. They indicated in isolation and really not working as a team to collectively come up with what those clear expectations are. And so we need to make sure that we're working and communicating those clear expectations and develop protocols to engage the stakeholders on a regular basis to get feedback. So there was not a feedback cycle or circle, and that really helps with building relationships that, you know, you can reach out to a group of people, ask for their feedback, and then follow back up with that same group. So the development of those protocols. And follow through with district plans and guidance. So if we say we're going to do something, we need to make sure that we're doing that. And that really helps with the trust building. And so all of these things will help mend and build those relationships back up with staff, administrators, and our parents. The next area of focus is communication. Again, follow through on received communications. There's definitely was some thought through our parents and through our staff that if they asked questions, there wasn't timely feedback. So, developing a protocol on how we follow through with that information that is coming, into central office. How do we make sure in a timely manner that we follow through on that communication, even if it's getting back and saying, what, I don't know the answer right now, but let me get back to you at, on this date. And be proactive and anticipate situations. There was definitely a sense in the report that we are reactive rather than being proactive. And so try to anticipate what could some problems be, and let's have a plan to anticipate those situations so that we can be more proactive than reactive. One of the things that came through too is that there was a lot of decision making that was coming from central office rather than at the building level. And we really need to raise the professional efficacy of our building level administration and give them the power to make decisions. Who knows the kids better than the building principals and the staff that is working with those kids? And really those decisions need to be made at that building level, and the principals need to feel empowered to make those decisions and be that district representative when they are sitting at those IEP meetings. Development of monthly parent newsletters and resources. We learned this from the parent group that met with Ellen and Kathleen and myself on a regular basis, that they felt that there wasn't enough resources out there. It wasn't a place that a parent that has a student with special needs had a place to go. And so the development of a monthly parent newsletter and continuing to put resources on our websites for parents to go to and have a place where they can, I think, will be very important moving forward to address some of the issues in the report. And the development of regular special education staff meetings to ensure consistency among buildings. This is going to be very crucial as we, start the process of bringing 3 staffs together into our new elementary school, that we are all on the same page now, so that when we come together in that new building, that we have protocols in place that we're all using. So this is going to be really important to make sure that we establish monthly special education staff meetings to ensure that there's consistency before we move into our new building. In terms of compliance and procedures, we need to create a special education handbook for parents and staff that should have checklists. Like, what do you do if a child is newly identified? What is the protocol that we're going through? What is the communication plan that follows letting a parent know that a child has been identified? How are we going to service? And then just some protocols to create to say, how do you make decisions on what are the best services that are needed for those special education students? We don't have that. And so I think a lot of our inconsistencies that the report indicated, as well as what we see on a daily basis, have come from not having a standard, this is how we're going to do business. And so, creating that special education handbook, putting it out on our website, making it available. So if parents have questions, they can say, this is what is going to happen if my child gets identified, and being very transparent about that. We need to do some additional professional learning on IEP compliance for staff. In the small sampling of IEPs that the company looked at, there were definitely inconsistencies in writing SMART goals or writing goals that were able to be measured at all. We need to do a better job of writing IEPs that have goals that can be measured, and teachers need to, as well as our principals, need to understand what a measurable goal looks like. So need to definitely do some additional professional learning on IEP compliance for that. And the development of transition plans and a district schedule for vertical transitions. One of the most difficult things we see is when, kids with special needs typically have more difficulty transitioning from buildings, and in those transition ages, and currently in our situation, going from 4th grade into the middle school, and then from going 8th grade into the high school. There needs to be a development of a plan and a schedule, so that those vertical transitions, we build time into staff members' schedules, that they can sit down and have a real critical conversation about the student needs before they move into that next building, because our kids get very comfortable in the buildings in which they're at. They love their staff. And so the receiving staff needs to do a better job of understanding what those needs are and how can we make those transitions, less traumatic for our students. And the last area of focus is data-driven decision-making. Some of the reasons, being in full transparency here, we have so many kids on settlement agreements is because, and they're attending other schools, is because we didn't have the data to back the progress that they were making with us. And so this has become, a real urgency to make sure that we are using data to make those decisions on where kids are, what kind of progress they're making, really beefing up what we're doing with progress monitoring. And it can't be just, I think, I feel, or I see this, what is that hard data that we're actually looking at, and developing protocols for progress monitoring. ESY, so that's extended school year services that some kids who demonstrate regression are entitled to have over the summer so they don't regress. Kids can stay the same and make no progress. That's different than regressing. We don't want a child at the end of a school year or after a break, we don't want them to regress. We want them to either stay the same, or certainly the goal is to make progress. Our ESY decision-making, we do not have an ESY decision-making tree. So granting ESY services to kids who maybe don't show actual regression, but just don't show any progress. Those are different services. And so creating and making those decisions with data to really show that if a child qualifies for ESY services over the summer. And we need to make staffing decisions based on data. It can't be that, this person needs another aide in their room, or that we need another special ed teacher, because it needs to be, why do we need it? And what is the data behind? What do our numbers show? What does the IEP say that requires us to add a staff member or decrease a staff member? What do our numbers look like? A constant monitoring of what that looks like to make those staffing decisions. And we have in our district an RTI process, and when it was working with Fidelity, it was working well. And we used that data through that process to determine whether or not a student needed to go on to have a full ETR or to have a full MFE done. And that process, while still in place, is not being implemented with Fidelity. So we need to relook at our RTI process, look at the data that process is providing us to make good decisions on whether or not we should determine to go and suspect a disability, or is a child just truly struggling, and a different method of instructional practice might help that child, and it's not really an identification issue. So to relaunch that program with Fidelity is something that we need to look at doing. So our plan implementation is...
Can I interject for just one question? I'm sorry. You mentioned ETR and MFE. Can you clarify what those acronyms stand for?
Oh, no, I'm kidding. Multi-factored evaluation. Okay, so that's the process where we do different assessments for the student to determine, and the ETR is the report that we get from that multi-factored evaluation, is to look at that information that we have on the students. So the plan implementation, to take the report that we received from the company, they gave us 27 items of things that they suggest that we implement. So the first was to hire a new director of special education, or a new pupil services director, which you will be acting on this evening. And after you act on that recommendation, I'm going to be happy to introduce you to her. She's online with us right now. So she's listening to this plan and listening probably to marching orders, unfortunately. But the creation of a special education coordinator, which I talked to you about in a board update, and how we were able to do that at a very low cost to the district. To have a special ed coordinator. It was recommended in the report that we actually create 2 based on the population of kids we have and the needs of our kids. However, again, because of our budgeting, we definitely don't have the resources to do that right now, but we were able to create 1 at virtually no cost to the district. So I'm excited to be able to at least do part of that recommendation. And then once we have our new director of special education in place, it will be a task to develop kind of a 3 to 5 year timeline to address those recommendations in the study. There's 27 things. It's hard to do 27 things in 1 year, nor should there be an expectation that we are doing 27 things in 1 year. And so to really look at those recommendations, prioritize those, and come up with how do we implement all of these recommendations in a 3 to 5 year timeline, which again would be up to the new director to determine with her staff what that could possibly look like over the next 3 to 5 years. And any questions you have for me?
I guess I'm just going to ask the first question. I know that there were timelines like built into the plan. Are those, do you think, pretty realistic to be able to comply with, or were they kind of pie in the sky?
Oh yeah, no. Some are. I mean, obviously we've implemented some of those recommendations already. So I think they're reasonable, but I think that, out of courtesy to our new director of special education, you know, that's an assessment that based on everything else that is going on in that department and based on the other responsibilities, I think that's something that the special ed director and the coordinator will have to sit down and say, is this realistic? And it may be that our timeline is that timeline, but it may be that we have to adjust things because we have other fish that we have to fry too in that department and other things that are going on throughout the district.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. There's a lot of work ahead of us on in the special ed area. So it's great that we were able to get such a thorough review of our programming and identify areas of improvement. And hopefully we can move the chains coming up real soon. Thanks. All right, we're going to move on to item 6, which is treasurer's announcements. Craig, you got Cashless Initiative and financial software update. I'll turn it over to you.
Yep. So we'll keep it really brief. Cashless Initiative. Last couple of weeks, I've been just hearing a lot of things going on, and we're trying to reevaluate all of our processes. And we'll have some more exciting announcements to make as people are right now not in I want to go back to school mode yet. So we're gonna have some announcements, and we're gonna try to get our district to be cashless within 2 to 3 years. So we're working with some different vendors and trying to figure out how we can do that. Cash points are always an issue for audit. So the less cash we receive, the better. So we're going to be moving and providing options for ACH payments from parents, as well as credit card payments for pay to participate, as well as a different system for possibly the lunchroom, as well as student fees. So I just kind of want to share that with the board in the direction that we're hopefully going over the next couple of years. It does take a little bit of time. But we're also going to look at ticketing for theater performances and football games and all of that stuff, especially with COVID, doing the least amount of transactions as possible. So there's a lot of different technological advances that are out there that can help us basically keep that in a cashless system. And so we're going to try to move forward with some of those and working with all the various departments, throughout the district. So more news will be coming soon. And then just wanted to share with everyone that we will begin our financial software implementation training and whatnot tomorrow. We are doing a kickoff meeting with TCCSA. So we have a lot of folks involved in that. There is myself and the rest of my support staff. We have HR involved as well, since they're going to be an integral part of how this is all going to work together. And then all the staff from TCCSA and Connect. So, and just as a reminder, TCCSA is who Connect is contracted with to help us with the conversion process, which is why we're working outside of Connect. This is something that TCCSA specializes in. So it should be a smooth transition, but we're going to meet with them tomorrow for about 2 hours and kind of just get the ball rolling. And then we will be going live with the software again in January of 2021. So just wanted to share that quick update with everybody. That's it.
Great. Any questions from board members? Okay.
Sorry, I just had one. I'm sorry. Like that transition, so this is obviously a 6-month transition process to get all of our information into the new system. Is that right?
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff is a data export in terms of that transition piece. I mean, I've obviously been through this transition once. It'll be a little bit different because our district is bigger. So the data transfer, the biggest thing that you lose is you lose history. So there's really not going to be the history there, but we can still get into the old system for at least a couple of years if we need it. And then the transition part, I try to give people enough notice as we go throughout. And for instance, we have to, we really can't do any spending in December and January because we have to close all the purchase orders on the old system and then reopen them on the new system. Payroll is completely seamless. Well, at least that's what we hope for. So we do all of the testing. We do parallel payrolls. We do a pre-note with the banks to make sure people are getting their money, when they're supposed to get their money. So that actually should be completely seamless. The purchasing side sometimes has some disruptions in terms of transition, but I try to give people enough notice so we can prepare adequately so it's not a huge inconvenience.
And just a question on the cashless initiative. I assume, in addition to being probably a lot easier for our families to deal with, with fees and costs, that that would eventually make us more efficient and maybe reduce the amount of man hours needed to process all of the cash transactions we do today. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things, even with the student fees, I don't think people realize, and I didn't realize, on the back end, what we're doing is taking hours upon hours upon hours of man hours to do this in a very manual setting, in addition to some of the cash points where we're like pay to participate gets sent into sometimes three or four different locations. And then by the time it gets down to the office and to the bank, and it's just not a very effective system. And so we're hoping that parents are excited about being able to go on an app, for instance, and make payments easily. And it should definitely help with our staff as well.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I know on behalf of the board, thank you for your efforts so far. I think when the board was faced with having to bring on a new treasurer, and we were able to identify you as our candidate and bring you on, I think we were all very hopeful that we could move forward in leaps and bounds from a technology standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. And you're taking clear steps to do that. And the district is going to be much better positioned, and already is, with some of the initiatives you've been doing. So keep up the great work, and let us know what you need from the board to support these ideas that will make life easier for everybody, not only our staff, but for our families and our community.
Mm-hmm. Not a problem.
Great. All right, item 7 is community communications, hearing of the public. Do we have anybody teed up?
Yes, I think it's just, I think we're good. This was just from Terry Ally saying the meeting was not live streamed in the beginning. We had some technical difficulties, but it is live streaming now. So,
okay.
So I think we don't have any public participation, I guess.
Okay. So that since we don't have any, we'll move on to item 8, which is superintendent's personnel recommendations. We have item 8A, which is certified recommendations, B, classified recommendations, C, supplemental recommendations, although there's nothing in there, so that's just kind of a placeholder, and then the approval. So can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. So Joelle, I'll turn it over to you to comment on these items and then see if we have any questions. You're on mute, Joelle.
Sorry. I'm going to ask if you have any questions on any of the recommendations that were made. Mr. Dosen, you are correct. There are no supplemental recommendations this month. Typically, we would have supplemental recommendations. We are holding off again on governor's guidance because, as you are aware, this past year closing so suddenly and not really knowing what was going to happen, and then the absolute closure of school for the rest of the school year. We had already board approved several contracts for the spring season of sports and performance and all of the supplementals. And so we're holding off in hopes to get guidance to see if there's going to be any mandatory school shutdown before we go and approve any of those supplemental contracts. And that is why you don't see any on the agenda for this particular month. But definitely there will be, depending on the guidance and what that looks like, there will be some on for the July board meeting. And I will have comments after your vote on this section.
Okay, as I know, we have Cynthia who has joined us, which we're going to be hopefully bringing on board here very shortly. So any board members have any questions?
No.
All right, Craig, roll call.
Okay, Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson? You're muted.
Yes.
Yep. Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Mack? Is she still on?
She was. She's holding up a yes in her video. So
it is my pleasure to introduce you to Mrs. Cynthia Tomasetti. She is going to join our team and our family as our new Director of Special Education, and we are excited to have her. I think I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself, but I think she will agree. We put all of our candidates through a ringer of an interview process, and basically, handed our candidates the 84-page document of the special ed audit and said, "What would you do with this?" And they had to come back and present to us, what their findings were and how they would proceed and some suggestions they would have to address the information in that report. So, Cindy, I know she goes by Cindy, but I don't want to be that informal, but tell us a little bit about yourself and,
Sure. Well, I'm really excited to be joining the Brecksville-Broadview Heights School District. I am currently working in Ashtabula Area City Schools as Director of Special Education and Student Services. I've only been there for a year, but prior to that, I was at Newberry School District. I was there for 5 years, and during my time at Newberry, I was elementary principal, but my last 3 years there I was elementary principal and special ed director. So I did a dual role there. I am really excited. I look forward to the challenges. I thoroughly went through the report, and I feel with my experiences this past year in the school district I'm currently at, we had a state review. So I've been put through the ringer there with the state, trying to fix some compliancy issues. And we've made a lot of growth this year in Ashtabula. So I'm excited to take the experiences I've had there and bring them to Brecksville-Broadview Heights. So I'm looking forward to joining the team.
Welcome. We're excited to have you. Thank you.
Great. Welcome aboard, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Great to have you. We're looking for good things from you. As you can see, we have a lot of room for growth. So we're hoping that you can hit the ground running and help us service our special ed community that much better.
Is she starting tomorrow?
We're working on a start date. We have a meeting scheduled July 2nd. So we're going to sit down and talk through all those and finalize those plans. But Cindy, don't feel like you have to stay for the rest of the meeting. You're welcome to, but we totally understand. If you sign off, no one's going to be offended.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm really excited to be joining the team. I look forward to starting soon and, hit the ground running. I have a lot of ideas swirling through my head, of where to start and just get moving.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
Great. Thanks. All right. Let's move on to item 9, Superintendent's Other Business. We have 9A, ESY-ESC contract, B, STEPS contract, C, Suburban Transportation contract, D, Cleveland Clinic Learner School contracts. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. No.
Moved and seconded. Joelle, do you want to give us a brief explanation?
Yeah, so the ESY, we talked about ESY through the report. So we put this out to our staff if they want to work for our ESY services in our school program first. And then we also contract out for some of those goals that students need to work on. We contract out like OT and PT if that is required for part of ESY services. So that's what that contract addresses through our Educational Service Center. STEPS contract is a contract for a specific student. Suburban transportation, and I'm going to skip just for the conversation. Suburban transportation contract is for we have to provide transportation for some of our students who go to other placements, and we currently do not have a vehicle to do that. So we contract this service out so that we make sure that our special needs student can get to their service providers. The Cleveland Clinic Learner School contracts, we have 2 students who attend there. So those are specific contracts for specific students.
Okay, thanks. Board members, any questions? Okay, Craig, roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Mack?
She's gone dark.
Gone dark.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to to agenda item 10, treasurer's.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, there she is. Yeah.
Okay.
Item 10, treasurer's consent agenda. We have item 10A, financial report, B, connect contract, C, FY21 high school student fees, D, Ohio plan proposal, E, administrative salary schedule, F, donations, G, minutes, H, FY20 appropriations measure, I, FY21 appropriations measure, J, amend the certificate of estimated resources for FY20, K, amend the certificate of estimated resources for FY21. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Craig, why don't you walk us through what's on your agenda?
Sure. There's a lot, but
Yes.
I will be brief. Because we basically have already wrapped up our fiscal year already, so that's kind of exciting. So in terms of the monthly, this is for May. It is definitely an evolving process as we kind of go through the finances. They seem to change dramatically all the time. So as we look at the overall picture here, you can see that on the revenue side, we are down $363,000. Most of that is not unexpected. That's from the state. A lot of it is from the state foundation cuts. We've also issued, we've started issuing and continue to mostly have finalized, but some funds that have come in and now are going back out. The current year to date on expenditures, we are down almost $1 million, which is good. And I think part of that is because we basically have not bought anything. It's been very, very quiet in that department for several months due to COVID. So I think that while we've saved a lot of that money now up front, we're going to, I don't want to say get hammered, but we're going to definitely be spending a significant amount of money in playing catch up as we start the new fiscal year, as well as planning for any COVID related expenses moving into next year and figuring out what that's going to cost and what school looks like. So still, we have a $606,000 favorable piece to the cash balance. I do believe this is going to be very, very similar now that I've seen what the final numbers are basically. So like I said, I won't dwell too much on this. So we're going to basically end. This says we're going to end at $19,683,000, and I think that our final cash balance is actually going to be $19,800,000 roughly. So it's actually a little bit better. When we look at the revenue, specifically in the monthly part, you can see that the local taxes is a huge piece there. That was again from the money was received last April. This year it was received in May. That's why it was there. So if we just compare blue to blue and orange to orange, you can see we had a reduction. So the reduction there is the top three items you have are the two items for the negatives is state revenue and then all other revenue. So not unusual. This is normal for the most part in terms of the taxes, because those can relate and change based on how the county auditor files with those homestead rollbacks, because it depends on whether they'll come in April or May. But that's where there's a large swing of really $2 million in that area. In terms of actual revenue received through May compared to the prior year, it's pretty consistent. We have an increase overall in the tax base of 2.4 million. And then the state revenue, of course, is down. And then all other revenue is a little bit above average. I mean, a little bit above from where it was last year in terms of how we collected from year to year at $149,000. When we look at the forecast as it's compared to the current year, local tax revenue is very, very consistent. The state revenue, as you can see, is down. Same common themes, and then all other revenue is up. And this is just as it relates again to the forecast versus the actuals. And then on the expenditure side, you can really, I mean, it's nice to see that. I mean, not nice to see. You can actually see a pretty significant decrease. So, the blue part is salaries, which is relatively consistent. But we did save some money by the COVID related experience. And then purchase services are down. This is, due to substitutes because we contract those services out as a purchase service through Wren Hill. And then the all other expenses it's almost like the green line doesn't exist. And that's just because, again, we stopped spending, especially once we heard the budget cuts were coming. So these are the actual expenses. We're down by $331,000 compared to last year. So the actual expenses incurred throughout May compared to the prior year, still higher, and that's mostly related, as you see in the boxes below, that it's salaries and benefits. So this was attributed to the step increases and the percentage on the base, which is expected and planned. That was $1,087,000. Purchase services, as we've talked about consistently, have been elevated. So I think as it compares to the as we get closer to the forecast, we're trying to make better decisions on how that number is going to look as it compares to the forecast, as we analyze our purchase services, which is one of the things I said that we'll continue to do and monitor just as we go through the next year or so. And then all other expenditures are now officially down by $241,000. So this is where it kind of puts us at our current year-to-date expenditures indicate the $969,000 is favorable compared to the forecast. And it basically says that according to from the forecast and where we are now, we're going to spend less money. So that's a good thing. And those categories, again, are salaries and benefits, purchase services, and all other expenditures. Salaries have tracked a little lower than the forecast. And again, we're going to try to tighten all of that up as we head into the fall. And once we have our final staffing analysis and all of that stuff, so that we can have as accurate of a picture as we can. Purchase services, again, was still up, and then all other expenditures were down. So that is that report. I think it's this one. The other reports are there just again for your reference in terms of the checks. The bank reconciliation came out perfectly fine for May. This Connect contract, this is basically a 3-year agreement. This is our ITC. I'm going to have Bob actually talk about some of the stuff that Connect offers next month once we get our technology report, which will be, again, following it, will be in the July meeting. We have some really great things that are happening in technology, by the way. So this is, every district has to work with an ITC. Ours is Connect. We could make it a competitive market and go elsewhere, but for right now, I guess, I mean, I think everyone's happy with what the services Connect is providing for us. So we're going to continue down that path for at least the next 3 years. The 21 high school fees, this was a long process. Again, hearing concerns, complaints, positives, negatives, looking at the process of everything. Scott Dutray pulled together a ridiculous amount of data in order to work through some of this. And I explained this in a board update as how we got there. So again, I think this is going to be really well received by parents, making things simple and easy to understand, as well as just making it easier on our staff in terms of the inputting piece of it. And financially, we're going to be okay with this decision. The Ohio School Plan, kudos to Chris Code, who went through the RFP process in getting 3 different vendors to bid for our property, casualty, automobile, all of our insurance needs. And we had 3 different quotes that came in. One was our current provider from Todd & Associates through Liberty Mutual. We also then got quotes from the Ohio School Plan, which is a pooled consortium of school districts in Ohio, as well as SORSA, again, a pooled consortium of school districts in Ohio. After that process kind of worked its way through, we're going to be making a switch to Ohio School Plan. It is still an increase over last year by about $4,000, but we're also going to get a credit for our Stop It app because they include that in their plan. So it's basically a net zero, whereas if we would have stayed with our old provider, it would have been an increase in costs for our insurance needs. The administrative salary schedule is just the 2 updates. We've switched some responsibilities in terms of systems engineer as we've repurposed and kind of reorganized our technology department. And then also this allows us to get that special education and preschool coordinator position put onto the administrative salary schedule at virtually no cost to the district. The minutes are there. And then just as these are more just housekeeping items, in at least as far as I'm concerned. So fiscal year 20, this is our final appropriations measure. So what we've done is we have our encumbrances, which we're carrying forward for next year, in addition to what we spent, so that we are in compliance with basically the Ohio Revised Code, so that our appropriations match what our spending has been. So this kind of just is a housekeeping to kind of clean up the books and make everything nice and neat. And then the fiscal 21 appropriations measure kind of gets us started for next year. We'll be making adjustments. I usually make adjustments somewhere around September or October, once we will kind of figure out more of and closely with where our spending and stuff is going to be after the new contracts take place. So this will get us started. And again, we'll amend this as we need to. And then the certificate of estimated resources. This is basically how much money the district has to spend, which is your carryover balance of what you had last year in all funds, in addition to what is brought in through revenues for the current fiscal year. So that is kind of what that document does, that these both get updated at the county auditor's office, which I'll be sending off after we close the fiscal year. And again, mostly housekeeping to match all of our budgets to making sure our system is, I guess, cleaned up and finalized for the fiscal year so that we can make a smooth transition into fiscal 21, which is next week, actually. So everything has been very, very smooth on the closing end. Payroll is balanced. Everything has come through. The process has been great, actually, so far. So no complaints from my end. And that's it.
Great, great. Board members, questions? I'm going to ask Craig, can you go to the high school fees or the school fees?
Sure.
See. So what you're saying is that there are a couple of big takeaways. If I read this correctly, one is a kind of a simplification of the fee structure, and the other is the reducing the parking fee from $100 to $50. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to highlight that because I know since I've been on the board, the $100 to park your car in the parking lot has been a pain point for many of our families. So it's good to see that we're able to bring that down and simplify, kind of back on your cashless initiative and efforts to bring us into a more efficient way to operate, more simplified, easier to deal with. This is another step in the right direction. So this is good stuff.
I don't know if everyone knows, but I was kind of taken aback when the high school kind of originally came and said that they have 170 different types of fees, which I think is a crazy number, right? So when Scott did all of this analysis, we basically can get to the same place by implementing a general fee. And it's gonna save, again, so much time from their end. I think that parents can understand what this is. And this goes into all kinds of the different classes that we just continue to offer. I mean, Brecksville does have a tremendous amount of offerings that are available to our students. So it was reasonable. It kind of gets to the same spot. And yes, parking was a huge, I didn't realize it was as big of an issue as it was until recently. So we have some different, we're going to keep evaluating this. We have to still talk to the middle school and the elementary school to kind of go through the same process. They don't have as many fees, but we may have to look at them in July or whatnot. But again, we're going to try to make everything as simple as possible.
Craig, does anything in implementing, one general fee, is there any implication that if there were as many line items, 170 line items of fees initially, do we essentially have to go back on the back end and reallocate and redistribute all of that funds that have gone into one pot essentially?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Yeah, I didn't ask that very well. I'm sorry. Sorry. So rather than have each fee for each class or subject that these students are enrolling in and that already being identified on the front end, are we just reversing the process and having to redistribute on the back end?
Yes, basically. So the way that I think they're doing it is that they're going to be distributing it by department. So the departments are not seeing any budget cuts at all. They're just going to redistribute it through a department level versus like a specific class. Okay. If that makes sense.
So basically, we're going from 170 little buckets to here's a department allocation for your costs.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and they'll still be able to allocate the same amount per class, if that makes sense. It's just that we're doing it by the department, and the department chairs will still have access to the same exact spending abilities, I guess is what I'm saying. But we're making it very simplified on the front end. So that's where it's a win-win for us.
Good.
Thank you.
Board, you want to switch back to the agenda, Craig? Board members, any other questions on the consent agenda?
I had some questions about the Connect contract, but you said the gentleman will be in next month. Is that right?
Yeah, no, and yeah,
Okay.
Brittany emailed me some questions about the Connect stuff, and they were great questions. A little, probably more technical than than I even know. So yeah, Bob will be able to answer that. I'll kind of just give him a heads up to be able to answer any questions about what we get through Connect, because it is a little bit complicated, and every ITC is a little bit different.
Thank you.
Yeah, Craig, thank you for the work for getting that streamlined.
No problem.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, roll call.
Okay, Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, you like to scroll down?
Sorry.
All right, we're on closing items. We have announcements, adjournment, and roll call. So what's under announcements? The next regular Board of Education. Whoops, can you go back to the announcements?
Sorry, there you go.
No worries. Our next Board of Education meeting will be Wednesday, July 22nd. Anything else? Joelle, do we have anything else to announce?
I don't think so.
All right. All right. I think that's a wrap then. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Bye.
Yes. She's done. All right. Good. I think that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, guys.
All right,
Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.